Dr. Vexen pressed her 4 delicate fingers against the glass containment unit and watched the human sleep. The creature looked so fragile when it rested. Its chest rose and fell in a slow rhythm. Its eyes moved beneath thin lids. It was dreaming, she knew. Humans dreamed. They were one of the few species in the galaxy that did. The Keth research station floated in the darkness between stars. It was far from any inhabited system, hidden from the Galactic Council and its laws about experimenting on sentient beings. Dr. Vexen did not like breaking those laws, but she had no choice. The war with the humans had lasted 3 cycles now, and the Keth were losing. Everyone was losing. The humans had appeared from nowhere. Their small blue planet sat in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. No one had bothered to check it. No one had thought to look. And then, suddenly, they were everywhere. Their ships were crude. Their technology was primitive, but they kept coming. They never stopped coming. Dr. Vexen had watched the battle recordings. She had seen Keth warships, the finest in the galaxy, destroyed by human vessels held together with nothing but metal welds and desperate hope. She had seen human soldiers fight with wounds that should have killed them. She had seen them crawl through fire, drag their broken bodies across battlefields, and keep shooting until their hearts finally stopped. It made no sense. The Keth were stronger, faster, smarter. They had thousands of years of military history. They had conquered 12 systems before the humans had even learned to make fire, and yet they were losing. The Council had tried diplomacy. The humans had laughed and asked for terms that no species would accept. The Council had tried threats. The humans had responded with attacks on 3 border stations in a single night. The Council had tried to understand. And that was why Dr. Vexen was here, on this hidden station, studying the captured human. His name was Marcus Cole. He was a soldier, a sergeant in something the humans called the Colonial Marines. He had been captured during the Battle of Nexar Prime, the only survivor of his unit. The Keth had found him buried under the bodies of his dead companions, still firing his weapon at anything that moved. He had killed 6 Keth soldiers before they finally brought him down with a stun beam. Dr. Vexen had been studying him for 30 standard days now. She had mapped his strange skeleton with its thick bones and flexible joints. She had cataloged his redundant organs, noting with interest that he had 2 kidneys, 2 lungs, and a 4-chambered heart that pumped blood with surprising force. She had examined his muscles, which were crude but powerful, capable of generating remarkable force for short periods. But none of that explained why the humans would not stop fighting. None of that explained why they kept coming, wave after wave, no matter how many of them died. None of that explained the look in Marcus Cole's eyes when he was awake, that look of cold determination, that look that said he would escape, he would kill her, and he would burn this station to ash, even if it was the last thing he ever did. Today she would find her answer. Dr. Vexen activated her console and began the analysis she had been preparing for days. She had taken samples of Marcus Cole's blood during his sleep cycles. She had isolated the chemicals that flowed through his body, and she had found something interesting, something terrifying. The Keth had a similar compound. They called it Vexar. It was produced in small amounts during moments of extreme stress. It increased heart rate, sharpened focus, and provided a brief burst of energy. Every species in the galaxy had something like it. It was a survival mechanism, a way to escape predators or respond to danger. But the human version was different. Dr. Vexen stared at the molecular structure on her screen. The human compound, which they called adrenaline, was 3 times more potent than Vexar. It lasted longer. It affected more systems in the body, and humans could produce it in quantities that would kill a Keth in minutes. She ran the simulation again. She could not believe what she was seeing. When a human experienced fear or anger or excitement, their body flooded with adrenaline. Their heart rate could double in seconds. Their muscles received increased blood flow, making them stronger and faster. Their pain receptors were suppressed, allowing them to ignore wounds that would incapacitate any other species. Their mind narrowed its focus to a single point: survival. But that was not the frightening part. The frightening part was that humans did not just use adrenaline to escape danger. They used it to run toward danger. They used it to fight when they should flee. They used it to keep going when their bodies were broken and their chances were zero. Dr. Vexen watched a recording from the Battle of Nexar Prime. A human soldier took a plasma bolt to the shoulder. The wound should have knocked him down. Instead, he screamed, grabbed the Keth warrior who had shot him and broke its neck with his bare hands. Then he kept fighting. His adrenaline levels during that moment were off the charts. Dr. Vexen pulled up more data. She had collected recordings from dozens of battles. In every one, the pattern was the same. When humans should give up, they fought harder. When they should collapse, they pushed forward. When they should die, they took as many enemies with them as they could. It was as if they were built for war. Dr. Vexen sat back in her chair and tried to understand. The Keth had evolved on a peaceful world. They had few natural predators. They had developed intelligence and technology without ever needing to fight for survival. War, for them, was a matter of logic and strategy. When the odds became unfavorable, retreat was the obvious choice. But humans had not evolved on a peaceful world. Dr. Vexen accessed the limited data they had on Earth, the human homeworld. It was a harsh place. The climate was extreme, swinging from burning heat to freezing cold. The planet was covered with predators. Disease was everywhere, and the humans had spent most of their history fighting each other. They were not just survivors. They were the descendants of survivors. Every human alive carried the genes of ancestors who had refused to die. Every human alive had been shaped by millions of years of fighting, struggling, and pushing forward against impossible odds. Adrenaline was their secret weapon. It was built into their very biology. It was the reason they never stopped. Dr. Vexen realized with growing horror that the Keth could not win this war. They could not outfight creatures who were designed to fight to the last breath. They could not outlast beings who saw defeat as just another challenge to overcome. She turned to look at Marcus Cole through the glass. He was awake now. He must have sensed her attention because he was staring directly at her. His eyes were calm, patient, waiting. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who knew, with absolute certainty, that his time would come. The smile of a creature whose body was pumping chemicals that told him he could not be stopped. The smile of a human. Dr. Vexen felt something she had never felt before in her long career as a scientist. She felt afraid. She turned back to her console and began composing a message to the Keth High Council. They needed to know what she had discovered. They needed to understand what they were fighting. And they needed to start thinking about how to end this war, because victory was no longer possible. The humans would never stop. It was written in their blood. The message took 3 days to reach the Keth homeworld. The High Council read it in silence. They asked for the data. They asked for the simulations. They asked for Dr. Vexen's analysis, her conclusions, her recommendations. She sent them everything. For a long time, there was no response. Then, on the 4th day, a new message arrived. It was not from the High Council. It was from the Supreme Commander of the Keth military, the highest-ranking officer in their civilization. His name was Grand Admiral Thorax, and he was the one who had started the war with the humans. The message was simple. Dr. Vexen was to continue her research. She was to find a weakness in the human biology. She was to discover how to neutralize the adrenaline response. And she was to do it quickly, because the humans had just launched a new offensive on 3 fronts. The war was getting worse. Dr. Vexen read the message twice. Then she looked at Marcus Cole, still watching her through the glass. He could not have known what the message said, but somehow she felt like he did. She got back to work. The next weeks were the most intense of Dr. Vexen's career. She ran every test she could think of. She analyzed every sample. She built computer models and ran simulations and studied the results until her eyes burned and her mind grew foggy. And slowly, she began to understand. Human adrenaline was not just a chemical, it was part of a system, a complex interconnected network of hormones and neurotransmitters and physical responses that worked together in ways she had never seen before. When a human experienced stress, their entire body changed. Their breathing quickened. Their blood vessels constricted in some areas and dilated in others. Their liver released stored glucose. Their pupils widened. Their senses sharpened. They became, for a short time, something more than human, something faster and stronger and more dangerous, something that could not be reasoned with, something that could not be stopped. But it could not last forever. Dr. Vexen found the weakness she was looking for on the 23rd day of her new research. Human adrenaline was powerful, but it had a cost. The human body could only maintain its heightened state for so long before it began to break down. Heart rate could not stay elevated forever. Muscles needed rest. The mind needed calm. After the adrenaline faded, humans experienced something called a crash. They became tired, weak, slow. Their reactions dulled. Their judgment suffered. They were vulnerable. Dr. Vexen immediately sent her findings to Grand Admiral Thorax. The strategy was obvious. If the Keth could not defeat humans in a direct fight, they needed to change how they fought. They needed to engage in short skirmishes, then retreat. They needed to keep the humans in a constant state of alertness, forcing them to burn through their adrenaline reserves. They needed to wear them down, then strike when they crashed. It was a good plan, a logical plan, a Keth plan. But Dr. Vexen knew it would not work. She had watched Marcus Cole for too long. She had seen what happened when he should have crashed. He did not rest. He did not become weak. He found a way to push through. He found another reserve of energy, another source of strength. He kept going. Humans were not just good at producing adrenaline. They were good at surviving the crash. They had been doing it for millions of years. They had built civilizations while exhausted. They had won wars while running on no sleep and no food. They had adapted to their own biology in ways that no other species could match. Dr. Vexen did not share these doubts with the Grand Admiral. She did not think he would want to hear them. She simply continued her research and waited for the war news that arrived every few days. It was never good news. Marcus Cole started talking on the 30th day. Dr. Vexen was running another blood test when she heard his voice through the intercom. It was rough and tired, but steady. He spoke in the common galactic tongue, which surprised her. She had not known he could speak it. "You're trying to figure out how to beat us," he said. It was not a question. Dr. Vexen did not answer. She was not supposed to interact with the subject. It could compromise her results. "It won't work," Marcus continued. "You know that, don't you? You've seen the data. You understand what we are." Dr. Vexen kept her eyes on her console. Her 4 hands moved over the controls, running another simulation. She tried to ignore the human's voice. "I've been watching you," Marcus said. "You're not like the others. You're not a soldier. You're a scientist. You ask questions. You want to understand. I can respect that." "You should not respect your captors," Dr. Vexen said, before she could stop herself. Marcus laughed. It was a strange sound, warm and cold at the same time. "I don't respect the people who put me here, but I respect you. You're doing your job. You're trying to help your people. There's nothing wrong with that." Dr. Vexen turned to look at him. He was standing at the glass now, his hands pressed against it. His eyes were not angry. They were curious. "Why do you fight?" she asked. "Your planet is far from here. You have no territorial claim on these systems. You could have stayed home. You could have been safe." Marcus shrugged. "Because we were told to stay home. Because other species looked at us and saw something weak. Something to be controlled. Something to be kept in a box." He smiled again. "Humans don't like boxes." But you die, Dr. Vexen said. Millions of you. I have seen the casualty reports. You lose 10 soldiers for every one of ours. How can that be worth it? Because we keep coming, Marcus said. And eventually you run out of soldiers, we don't. Dr. Vexen stared at him. She did not understand. The Keth would never accept such losses. No species would. It's the adrenaline, Marcus said, as if reading her thoughts. You've been studying it. You know what it does to us, but you don't understand what it means. What does it mean? Marcus leaned closer to the glass. His eyes were bright now, lit from within by something Dr. Vexen could not name. It means we can't give up, he said. Even when we want to, even when it would be smarter to stop, our bodies won't let us, our minds won't let us. We're programmed to keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight for. He stepped back from the glass, his expression softened. You're right to be scared, he said, but you're wrong to think you can find a way to beat us. There isn't one. There's only one way this war ends, and it's not with a Keth victory. Dr. Vexen wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong. But she looked at the data on her console, at the simulations and the models and the endless analysis, and she knew he was right. She turned back to her work and said nothing. But Marcus's words stayed with her, echoing in her mind long after he had gone quiet. They stayed with her through the next days and weeks of research. They stayed with her as the war news grew worse and worse. And they stayed with her when the humans finally came for their soldier. The attack came without warning. Dr. Vexen was in her lab when the alarm started screaming. The station shook. The lights flickered. Emergency protocols activated, sealing doors and flooding corridors with security drones. It made no difference. The humans cut through the station like a blade through flesh. Dr. Vexen watched on her security monitors as they moved through the corridors. They were fast, efficient, brutal. They did not hesitate. They did not retreat. They kept coming just like Marcus had said they would. Within an hour, the station was lost. Dr. Vexen sealed herself in her lab and waited. She could hear the sounds of fighting outside her door, screams and explosions and the distinctive crack of human weapons. Then, suddenly, silence. The door opened. A human woman stood in the doorway. She was tall and muscular, with short dark hair and a scar across her face. Her eyes were the same color as Marcus's, cold and determined. Dr. Vexen, the woman said, I'm Captain Sarah Cole. You have something that belongs to us. Cole, the same name as Marcus. Dr. Vexen understood immediately. He's your brother, she said. He's my husband, the woman corrected, and you're going to take me to him now. Dr. Vexen did not argue. She led the captain through the station, past the bodies of Keth soldiers and the wreckage of destroyed drones. When they reached the containment unit, Marcus was already standing at the glass, waiting. Captain Cole pressed her hand against the release panel. The glass slid open. Marcus stepped out. He looked at his wife. She looked at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus smiled. It was the same smile Dr. Vexen had seen before, but different now. Softer, warmer. Took you long enough, he said. Traffic was bad, Sarah replied. They embraced. It was brief and fierce, the embrace of two people who had thought they might never see each other again. Then they separated and turned to Dr. Vexen. What do we do with her? Sarah asked. Marcus studied the Keth scientist. His eyes were unreadable. Let her go, he said finally. She's not a soldier, she was just doing her job. Sarah frowned. She's been experimenting on you for months. She's been trying to understand us, Marcus said, and she did, better than most. He looked at Dr. Vexen. Go home, tell your council what you learned. Tell them there's only one way this ends. Maybe they'll listen. Dr. Vexen wanted to say something, to thank him perhaps or to apologize, but the words would not come. Instead, she simply nodded and walked away. Behind her, she heard the humans preparing to leave. Their voices were calm, professional, already planning their next move, already thinking about the next battle. They never stopped. It was written in their blood. Dr. Vexen understood that now. She understood it better than anyone in the galaxy. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that her people needed to find a way to make peace, because they could not win this war, not against creatures who were built to never give up, not against humans. The shuttle carried Dr. Vexen away from the station as it burned behind her. Through the small window, she could see human ships surrounding it, their weapons still hot from the assault. They moved with a coordination that should have been impossible for such a young species. They fought like they had been doing it forever. And in a way they had. Dr. Vexen had spent her entire career studying alien biology. She had cataloged thousands of species, documented their strengths and weaknesses, analyzed their evolutionary histories. But she had never seen anything like humans. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced, but they had something no other species possessed. They had a refusal to quit that was written into every cell of their bodies. They had adrenaline. The shuttle jumped to faster-than-light speed, and the stars blurred into lines of light. Dr. Vexen leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She had a report to write, a message to deliver, and a war to help end before there was nothing left of her people to save. The humans never stopped, but maybe, just maybe, the Keth could learn when to. 3 weeks after her escape from the research station, Dr. Vexen stood before the High Council of the Keth Empire. The chamber was vast, a dome of polished black stone that had witnessed 10,000 years of history. The council members sat in a curved row above her, their faces stern and unreadable. Grand Admiral Thorax was there too, standing to the side in his military uniform. His scales had dulled with age, but his eyes were still sharp. He had started this war. He still believed he could win it. Dr. Vexen knew better. "You have requested this audience to present your findings," the High Chancellor said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "We are listening." Dr. Vexen activated her console. The chamber's displays came to life, showing the molecular structure of human adrenaline. The simulation she had run 100 times. The data she had gathered over months of research. "This is what we are fighting against," she said. "Not just soldiers, not just ships, but biology itself." She walked them through her research. She explained the adrenaline response, how it transformed humans into something more than their baseline selves. She showed them the battle recordings, the impossible feats of endurance and strength. She presented the simulations that showed what happened when humans were pushed to their limits. "They do not stop," she said. "Their bodies are designed to keep fighting long past the point where any other species would collapse. They can ignore wounds that would kill us. They can function on no sleep, no food, no hope. They just keep going." The council listened in silence. Some of them seemed skeptical, others seemed afraid. Grand Admiral Thorax's expression never changed. "You have found a weakness," the High Chancellor said. It was not a question. She had read the reports. "Yes," Dr. Vexen admitted. "The adrenaline response cannot last forever. Humans experience crashes, periods of exhaustion and vulnerability. In theory, we could exploit this." "Then why do you seem so uncertain?" Dr. Vexen hesitated. This was the part she had been dreading, the part that went against everything the Keth believed. "Because they have evolved to survive the crash," she said. "They have thousands of years of history showing them pushing through exhaustion. They have built their entire civilization on the ability to keep going when they should stop. Our strategy might work in individual battles, but over the course of a war, they will adapt. They always adapt." She turned to face the council directly. "We cannot win this war through military means. We cannot outfight creatures who are designed to never give up. Our only option is to negotiate, to find a peace that both sides can accept." The chamber erupted. Council members shouted over each other. Some demanded to know if she was suggesting surrender. Others called her a coward, a traitor, a fool. Grand Admiral Thorax stepped forward, his eyes blazing with anger. "You want us to bow to these primitives?" he demanded. "These creatures who were building mud huts when we had conquered 12 systems. I will not accept this." Dr. Vexen stood her ground. "I want us to survive. I want there to be a Keth Empire 100 years from now. If we continue this war, there will not be." "You overestimate them," Thorax said. "They are flesh and blood just like us. They can be killed. They can be broken." "They can be killed," Dr. Vexen agreed. "But they cannot be broken. That is the difference. That is what you do not understand." She pulled up a new recording. It was from the battle where Marcus Cole had been captured. The footage showed his unit, outnumbered 10-1, holding their position against wave after wave of Keth soldiers. One by one they fell, but they never retreated. They never surrendered. They fought until the last one dropped. "This is what they are," Dr. Vexen said. "This is what their adrenaline makes them. You can kill them, but they will take you with them. You can defeat their armies, but more will come. You can burn their worlds, but they will rebuild. They do not know how to stop. It is not a choice for them. It is who they are." The chamber fell silent. Grand Admiral Thorax stared at the recording. His expression had changed. The anger was still there, but something else was creeping in, something that looked almost like fear. "What do you suggest?" the High Chancellor asked quietly. "I suggest we send an envoy to the humans," Dr. Vexen said. "Not to surrender, not to admit defeat, but to explore the possibility of peace. We need to find out what they want. What would make them stop fighting? And if they refuse?" Dr. Vexen thought about Marcus Cole, about the look in his eyes when he had told her there was only one way the war ended, about the humans who had come to rescue him, cutting through a fortified station like it was nothing. "If they refuse," she said, "then we need to prepare for a very long war, and we need to accept that we may not win." The council debated for hours. Thorax argued for continued military action. Others supported Dr. Vexen's proposal. The High Chancellor listened to both sides, her face betraying nothing. Finally she raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. "We will send an envoy," she said. "Dr. Vexen, you will lead the diplomatic mission. You understand these creatures better than anyone. Perhaps you can find a way to communicate with them." Dr. Vexen bowed. "I will do my best." Thorax turned away in disgust, but he did not argue. Even he could see which way the tide was turning. The war was not over, but for the first time since it began, there was a chance it might end without the complete destruction of the Keth Empire. Dr. Vexen left the chamber with a new purpose. She was no longer a researcher studying an enemy. She was a diplomat seeking peace with a species that had evolved to never give up. It would be the hardest thing she had ever done. The diplomatic ship was small and unarmed. It broadcast continuous signals of peaceful intent as it crossed into human-controlled space. Dr. Vexen sat in the central cabin, surrounded by translators and assistants and a single security officer who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. They were met at the border by a human patrol ship. It was larger than their vessel, bristling with weapons that tracked their every move. A tense voice came over the communication channel. "Keth vessel, state your purpose." Dr. Vexen took a breath. "We come to discuss peace. I am Dr. Vexen of the Keth Science Division. I request a meeting with your leadership." A long pause, then "Hold your position." They waited for 6 hours. Dr. Vexen used the time to review everything she knew about human culture, human history, human psychology. She had studied them for months. She understood their biology better than anyone, but she was still not sure she understood them. Finally, a new voice came over the channel. It was female, calm and confident. "Dr. Vexen, this is Admiral Chen of the Colonial Navy. We have received your request. A ship will escort you to a neutral station where talks can begin. Do not deviate from your assigned course. Do not make any sudden movements. We will be watching." "Understood," Dr. Vexen said. The escort ship was massive, a battle cruiser that dwarfed their diplomatic vessel. It fell into position beside them and guided them deeper into human space. Dr. Vexen watched through the window as they passed colony worlds, mining stations, shipyards turning out new vessels at an impossible rate. The humans had been part of the galactic community for less than a century, but they had already built an empire that rivaled any in the galaxy, not through diplomacy or trade or careful expansion, but through sheer, relentless effort. They never stopped. It was written in their blood. The neutral station was in a system that neither side controlled. It was old, built by a species that had gone extinct long before humans or Keth had achieved space travel. The perfect place for two enemies to meet. Dr. Vexen was escorted to a conference room by a pair of human marines. They were polite but watchful, their hands never far from their weapons. She did not blame them. Trust would have to be earned. The human delegation arrived 10 minutes later. There were 5 of them, led by a woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She introduced herself as Secretary of State Williams. The others were military advisors, diplomats, and a single scientist who studied Dr. Vexen with obvious curiosity. "You're the one who was studying Sergeant Cole," the scientist said. His name tag read Dr. Mitchell. "Yes," Dr. Vexen admitted. "I apologize for any distress that may have caused." "He said you treated him fairly, that you were trying to understand us, not just find ways to kill us." Dr. Mitchell smiled slightly, high praise coming from Marcus. The talks began awkwardly, as talks between enemies always do. Secretary Williams asked what the Keth wanted. Dr. Vexen explained that they wanted the war to end. Williams asked what the Keth were willing to offer. Dr. Vexen said that was what they were there to discuss. Hours passed, then days. The negotiations were slow and frustrating. Both sides had grievances. Both sides had demands. Neither side was willing to give ground easily. But gradually, progress was made. Dr. Vexen learned more about the humans during those talks than she had learned in months of research. She learned that they did not want to conquer the galaxy. They just wanted to be respected. They wanted to be seen as equals, not as primitives to be controlled. They wanted room to grow, to explore, to become whatever they were meant to become. It was not so different from what the Keth wanted. On the 7th day of talks, Secretary Williams asked Dr. Vexen a question that surprised her. "Why did you let us capture you?" Dr. Vexen blinked. "I do not understand." "You could have escaped. When our forces attacked the station, you sealed yourself in your lab, but you did not destroy your research. You did not try to fight. You just waited. Why?" Dr. Vexen thought about the question. She had asked herself the same thing many times over the past weeks. "Because I wanted this," she said finally. "I wanted peace. I wanted someone on my side to understand what we were fighting against. I thought if I survived, if I could bring my research back to the council, they might listen." And did they? "Eventually. It took time, but they are listening now. That is why I am here." Williams nodded slowly. "Marcus said you were different from the others. He said you saw us as people, not just enemies. He said if anyone could make peace between our species, it would be you." Dr. Vexen felt something warm in her chest. It was an unfamiliar sensation. Pride, perhaps, or hope. "I will try," she said. "It is all I can do." The treaty took 3 months to negotiate. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when it seemed like the talks would collapse entirely. Grand Admiral Thorax did everything he could to undermine the process. Some human generals wanted to keep fighting until the Keth were completely defeated. But in the end, the voices of reason won. The Treaty of the Neutral Station established borders that both sides could accept. It created trade agreements and cultural exchanges. It set up a joint commission to investigate war crimes and ensure that nothing like this conflict happened again. It was not perfect, no treaty ever is, but it was a beginning. Dr. Vexen was there when the final documents were signed. She watched as Secretary Williams and the High Chancellor pressed their marks to the agreement. She saw the relief on the faces of diplomats from both sides. She felt the weight of thousands of lives saved, battles avoided, futures made possible. And she thought about the strange chemical that had started it all. The adrenaline that flowed through human veins, making them fight when they should flee, push when they should rest, never stop when every instinct screamed for surrender. It had nearly destroyed the Keth, but it had also, in a strange way, saved them, because it had forced them to find another way, to look beyond war and victory and see the possibility of peace. The humans never stopped, but sometimes Dr. Vexen realized that was exactly what you needed. Someone who would never give up, never accept defeat, never stop pushing until they found a way through. The galaxy needed humans, it just had not known it yet. 5 years later, Dr. Vexen stood in a lecture hall on the human world of New Terra. The room was filled with students from a dozen species, gathered to hear her speak about xenobiology and the science of peace. She was older now, her scales graying at the edges, her movements slower than they used to be. But her mind was as sharp as ever, and she had so much to share. When I first began studying humans, she said, I saw them as a problem to be solved, a threat to be neutralized. I spent months analyzing their biology, searching for weaknesses, trying to find a way to defeat them. She paused, looking out at the faces before her. Human and Keth and a dozen other species, all watching with interest. What I found instead was something remarkable, a species that had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of impossible odds. A species that carried in their very blood a refusal to give up, to stop, to accept defeat. She smiled. It was a gesture she had learned from humans, and it still felt strange on her face, but it felt right. I learned that the key to peace is not finding your enemy's weakness. It is understanding their strength. When I understood what humans were, what drove them, what made them who they are, I realized that we could never defeat them. But I also realized that we did not need to, because the same thing that made them unstoppable in war made them invaluable in peace. She clicked a button, and the display behind her lit up with images. Humans and Keth working together on joint projects, scientific collaborations, cultural festivals, children of both species playing together, too young to know they were supposed to be enemies. Humans never stop, Dr. Vexen said. They never stop fighting, but they also never stop hopping, never stop building, never stop reaching for something better. That is what their adrenaline gave them. Not just the ability to survive, but the drive to make the galaxy a better place. She looked at the human students in the audience. They were listening intently, some of them taking notes, others just watching with wide eyes. The next time you feel your heart racing and your hands shaking and your body telling you to fight or run, remember what that feeling means. It is not just a chemical reaction. It is the legacy of millions of years of evolution. It is the reason your species is here, among the stars, changing the galaxy. She turned off the display and stepped away from the podium. Never stop, she said. It is who you are, and it is exactly what the galaxy needs. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous wave. Dr. Vexen stood at the center of it, feeling the warmth wash over her. She had come so far from the scientist who had studied a captive human in a hidden station. She had learned so much, and she knew there was still more to discover, more to understand, more to build. That was the human gift, she realized. Not just adrenaline, but inspiration. The ability to make others believe that anything was possible, that no challenge was too great, that the future was worth fighting for. Dr. Vexen had spent her whole life studying alien biology. But in the end, The greatest lesson she had learned was not about chemicals or evolution or the mechanics of survival. It was about hope. And like adrenaline, hope was something that humans carried in their blood, something they could not help but share with everyone around them. The galaxy had been changed by human adrenaline, but it would be transformed by human hope. And Dr. Vexen knew, with the certainty of a scientist who had spent years gathering data and running simulations and analyzing results, that the best was yet to come. The humans never stopped, and now neither would anyone else. Marcus Cole read the news article on his tablet as he sat on the porch of his small house on New Terra. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Sarah sat beside him, her hand resting on his. "She did good," Sarah said, reading over his shoulder. "Dr. Vexen, she really did good." Marcus nodded. He thought about those months in the containment cell, about the Keth scientist who had watched him with such confusion and fear and, eventually, understanding. He thought about the day she had let him go, the look on her face as she walked away. "She was always smarter than the rest of them," he said. "She saw what we were, and instead of being afraid, she decided to learn." Sarah squeezed his hand. "You think we made a difference, you and me, in all that mess?" Marcus thought about the war, about the friends he had lost, the battles he had fought, the endless days and nights when it seemed like the fighting would never end. He thought about the adrenaline that had kept him going, the chemical fire in his blood that would not let him stop. "I think we showed them who we are," he said finally, "and that's enough. That's all any of us can do." The sun dipped below the horizon. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Keth and humans were working together for the first time in history. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing. Marcus Cole, former sergeant of the Colonial Marines, watched the stars come out and felt at peace. He had spent his whole life fighting. Now, for the first time, he could rest. But he knew deep in his bones that if the call came again, he would answer. He would fight. He would push through whatever stood in his way. Because that was what humans did. They never stopped. It was written in their blood.